Welcome to Dead Man Talking.
Tonight's story is from the incredible mind of TheStoryKid from over on Reddit, No Sleep. And as ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story. And title: I experienced the curse of a vampire. Let's get straight into that. In popular legend, a vampire was a creature, often fanged, that preys upon humans, generally by consuming their blood. Vampires have been featured in folklore and fiction of various cultures for hundreds of years, predominantly in Europe, although belief in them has waned in modern times. Now, they could be stopped by sunlight or a big wooden stake to the heart, or even what people will call holy water. Too bad for me, because I learned that the curse of a vampire is no laughing or joking matter. So, how long are you planning to be gone for again? I watched from the doorway of my older brother's room as he was packing camping clothes and other things, which he would fit into a suitcase that was sitting open on his bed. Look, Scott, I already told you, it's just a camping trip. I won't be gone forever, just a week or two, or maybe even a couple of days, he said, looking at me. I didn't say anything, but I nodded my head. I was trying to wrap my brain around why my brother wanted to go to the woods to camp. We have a big enough backyard and Mum didn't want him to go first, but she changed her mind after. My older brother Frank is 20. He'd actually been planning on going on a giant camping trip ever since he graduated from high school, and he was finally getting to do it. I was jealous of Frank most of the time, probably because everyone in the neighborhood called him the whole package. Frank was very smart. He got better grades than me, and plus, he was more caring than me. Therefore, whenever he was around, people would pay more attention to him, and not me. Even Mum and Dad would. But yet, here I was, a 14-year-old nobody, and I'm siblings with a guy who one day might find the freaking cure for cancer. I then followed Frank downstairs as he held his packed suitcase in his hand. I wanted to take that stupid thing and run it over in his own car. But this was something Frank wanted to do, and I couldn't stop him, no matter how hard I tried and begged him. I knew it wasn't going to work. My mum ran from the kitchen and gave Frank a hug, saying to be careful and watch himself for his own safety. Frank told me he will be back in a few days or a week. And so, after 5 minutes of Mum squeezing Frank's brain out through his ears and kissing him until his face turned red, he was ready to leave. And so we both watched from the doorway as Frank walked out of the house and got into his car. He looked at us with a smile on his face and waved to both of us. I caught myself waving back, and then a minute later he was off on his camping trip in the middle of nowhere. And now it was just me and Mum for the next couple of days, or maybe even a week. I really appreciated Frank, as he was there for me when Mum couldn't be there. He helped me with almost everything, like learning how to ride a bike and even how to tie my shoes. I even helped Frank with a few things. But now Frank was gone. I wanted to call him and beg him to come back home. In the woods or wherever he planned to camp, I didn't think he would have cell service. I had gotten a cell phone a few weeks ago and had Frank's number. This was mostly for whenever Mum was too busy to come pick me up, so Frank would have to do it. A few days rolled by and there wasn't a single phone call or word from Frank, which started to worry Mum. And then, one night I was sitting on my bed, in my bedroom, doing some last-minute homework, and I had my phone next to me, when it rang very loud, so loud it made me jump. I was planning to let it ring, but I decided to pick it up. I thought it was this jerk from my high school, but then I saw the number and smiled. It was Frank calling me. Hey there, dude. I'm coming back home from the camping trip. I'll be there tomorrow. I already told Mum, Frank said over the phone. That's amazing. I can't wait to see you, I said, so excited that my brother was finally returning home. Frank then told me that the camping was okay, only it was really hard and sometimes annoying. But he did and then hung up and I was left there holding a cell phone to my ear. And the next morning, I ran downstairs as I heard talking, and a big smile spread over my face. I knew it, and I was excited to see him again. And when I got down to the first floor, and there he was, standing there, talking to me. "Frank, you're back!" I shouted as he smiled at me. I then ran up and gave him a big hug. And this was the longest hug I'd ever gave him. He hugged me smiling, and I saw his suitcase was next to his feet, and I asked him if he was okay, and he said he was fine, before messing with my hair. Frank then headed up to his room, and Mum smiled, saying she was preparing Frank's favourite foods for dinner, and I was excited for that. I wanted to check on him, so I headed upstairs to his room, and I was thinking about what to ask him. When I got there, Frank was unpacking his stuff. I was confused and asked him what had happened. He told Mum that camping wasn't for him. He was going to try something else, but for now, he was going to try it on a different day. I grinned for some reason. I felt like Frank was going to say that in my brain I knew it was too good to be true, and then I watched as Frank pulled out a bottle of something out of his suitcase. I noticed it was red, which looked darker than normal wine. "Dude, where did you get that from? You were camping in the middle of freaking woods. Did you make it yourself?" I asked, pointing at the bottle. "Haha, it's just some random wine I got from a store when I was driving back into town," Frank said as he put the bottle on his dresser. I was about to ask him what it was and more questions, but Mum called for him and then he ran out of the room. I then walked over to the bottle and took it from Frank's drawer. I then twisted the top off the bottle. It smelled ripe, like it had been sitting in someone's cabinet for 40 years. I then looked around and made sure no one was looking at it. I took a very small sip of it, just a little one, and I gagged. It tasted like iron or rotten junk. Maybe that's just the taste of it anyways. I ran to the bathroom and washed the horrible taste out of my mouth. I then heard Mum calling for me, so I came running down and into the dining room so fast that I crashed into Frank, who was holding a plate of something. And he smiled and told me to calm down, and I just laughed nervously and then sat down at the table, thinking about the drink Frank had. "Hey Frank, why did you buy that wine?" I asked, giving Frank a worried look. Mum coughed on some water that she had been drinking. She put a cup on the table and looked at Frank. He freaked out and then Frank gave me a death glare and I felt like sinking into the ground. "Franklin, have you been drinking while you were driving? I told you not to do that. You could have freaking crashed." Mum shouted, shocked, looking at Frank. Frank then explained to Mum that he hadn't done anything with it. He was intending to save it for when he returned home. However, while he explained this to Mum, he would look over and give me a death glare that made me shiver. I kept quiet as I watched Mum and Frank yell and argue at each other, and I knew it was my fault that they were yelling. After dinner, I was sitting in my room, messing around on my phone, when I heard a knock on the open door. I looked up and saw Frank, who wasn't smiling. I gulped under my breath. I was freaking out for some reason. "Why the hell did you tell Mum about the bottle of wine I had with me? She thinks I'm drunk now," Frank hissed with his arms crossed. "Well, quick question. Why would you go camping in the middle of nowhere and then come back to the house with a bottle of fucking wine?" I shouted at him. I then slapped a hand over my mouth, but I was too late. I had just shouted at Frank, but I was so mad at him. But all Frank did was rub his eyes and groan, and then when he looked up at me again, I noticed his eyes were bloodshot. Frank, are you okay? Your eyes are all freaky." I asked, pointing at my eyes to make him look at his eyes. Frank then touched his eyes like they weren't his. He said he was tired. He stayed up most of the night in the woods and then, without another word, he was gone, and I stopped hearing him walk away to his room. The next morning after that whole chat I had last night with Frank, I actually didn't have any school or anything else to do, so I was in the backyard kicking my old soccer ball around and sighing under my breath. I was actually kind of bored. Mum was in the house doing something and Frank was in his room doing something. I had no idea what was going on with him, but he had been acting weird ever since he came back from his camping trip, and it was confusing me so bad it was giving me a headache. I kicked the ball as hard as I could to get some anger out and then watched as the ball flew over our fence and I growled under my breath as I was going to have to climb over the fence to get the ball. And so I climbed over the fence and landed in the backyard of my neighbour. I then looked around and I didn't see anyone else in the yard at the time but me. And my neighbour was this crappy old guy that believed if anything landed in his yard, well, it was his, but he wasn't alone. He had this stupid dog that he said would bite anyone's leg off, but I never believed it. I looked around and then saw my circle ball sitting on the grass, and I grinned as I ran up to it, grabbing it and tucking it under my arm. I was about to climb over the fence when I stopped. I smelled something awful. Something was dead. I was confused and then turned around and I screamed, feeling the ball fall from under my arm. The neighbour's dog lay on its side, not moving. It wouldn't have heard my scream. Therefore, I stepped closer to it, ready to feel its teeth sink into my throat. But it didn't move. Then I put my hand on its body. I felt cold and lifeless. I then turned it over, and then I screamed again, falling on my ass. Then I looked at the thing I had screamed at. The dog had 2 similar bite marks on its neck. They were right next to each other, and I could see blood coming out of them, and I felt like puking. What the hell happened to it? Did it get bit by another dog? I asked myself, looking around. I wasn't interested in staying to find out. I grabbed my ball again and headed back into my backyard. I started kicking the ball around and tried to get the awful idea of that dead dog out of my head, but it wouldn't leave my dumb brain. I then let the ball go and ran into the house, slamming the back door a bit too hard. Then Mum came into the room and I could see she was wearing her baking apron. She had white stains on it, and she asked me what had happened. Should I tell her or just stay quiet? I thought to myself, standing there. Scarter, are you okay? What happened? Why are you shaking? My ma sounded even more worried that I hadn't said anything. I wasn't planning to tell Mum anything. However, I knew I couldn't hide my shock from her, and so I took a deep breath and then looked at her without freaking out. Mum, I was playing outside in the backyard and then accidentally kicked my ball into the neighbour's yard, and I found that dog dead. It had 2 bite marks on its side, like something had bit it. I said, explaining the whole thing to my mum. Oh my God, I should call the police, Mum said, and then ran to get the phone. I then ran upstairs to go to my room, but I crashed into something quite substantial. When I looked up, I saw it was Frank. He was standing in my doorway, and I backed up and he looked at me, his eyes even more red than ever before. Hey bro, how's it going? Did you finish that thing you were doing in your room? I laughed nervously. Don't hey bro me. Why did you tell Mum? He hissed in a dark tone. Nothing. I just told her I was outside and found the neighbour's dog dead with 2 bite marks on its side. They actually look like bat bite marks, or something else. I'm not really sure, I explained to Frank. And before I could say another word, Frank grabbed me by the collar of my shirt and then slammed me into the wall so hard I could see stars in the back of my eyes. I then saw his eyes looked almost completely red and he had a dark look on his face. Look here, freak. If you tell Mum or anyone else what I did to that dog, I'm gonna kill you in the middle of the night when no one can hear you scream. Do you fucking understand me? He hissed darkly at me. Well, I didn't say anything. I just nodded. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, like I was gonna cry. And then I noticed Frank had the same bite marks on his neck as the dead dog did. And then, as quick as he had grabbed me, Frank let me go, and then walked off. What the hell is going on with him? I mumbled as I rubbed the back of my neck, confused about what just happened. After that, I started noticing Frank was acting even more wild. I saw him drinking more of that red stuff he had got from the store when he was coming home. He never went outside during the day, even though Mum and me begged him to go outside. Then one day, I had a chance to look around his room for some freaking answers. Frank had the late shift and told Mum he would be back in a few hours. However, in a flash of an eye, he was gone. I then ran to his room. I turned the light on when I got in there. I noticed there was newspaper all over the windows, not letting in any light that had come with the day. Then I saw there were 4 bottles of that red drink on his dresser. What the hell was that stuff and why was he drinking it so much? And then, suddenly the answer hit me like a bolt of lightning. I ran into my room and flipped on my light, grabbing a book from the bookshelf and looking at the cover. The Supernatural Guide for Dummies. I then threw the book on my desk and started flipping through it until I stopped on the page about vampires. I started reading it until I got to a list telling the readers how to tell if someone was a vampire. I started reading the list, and everything that had been going on with Frank's eyes and the blood drinking. I then realised that those bottles of red stuff on Frank's dresser were actually fucking bottles of blood. Then I remembered what Frank had told me a few days ago. Frank was the one that killed the neighbour's dog. He sucked the blood out of it, and the newspapers were to block out the sun because that was one of the vampire's weaknesses. I felt my mouth drop open in shock. My brother was a vampire. I had been for the past few days. But how did this happen? How did he turn into a vampire? I knew I had to ask him, but I needed to ask him in a way where Frank wouldn't bite my neck off. I'm going to confront him tomorrow after Mum leaves for work. I hissed under my breath. I had to stop Frank before he bit me and Mum and drained us of our blood and kept it in a bottle for himself to drink later when he got thirsty. And I also needed a plan to get rid of his vampire part, and fast. I then grabbed a notepad and started writing down my plan and what I was intended to do. I wasn't planning to let a fucking vampire roam free in my house and use my brother for its evil plan. The day after, I had my plan written down and I had the perfect time. Mum was at work and Frank was staying at home to look after me because Mum doesn't think I can handle myself for some dumb reason. But I didn't care because I had a job. I found Frank sitting in the living room. He was on the couch and he was drinking a bottle of that red junk. And I then cleared my throat and he looked up at me a bit angry. "What do you want, Scott?" "I'm busy," Frank said without even looking at me. "Not too busy to be a vampire," I hissed at him. Frank jumped up from the couch and glared at me. I could see his eyes were very red now, and the bite on his neck was starting to bruise and turn some weird colours. However, I didn't care about any of that right now. "I thought it would take you a bit longer to figure it out. How did you do it?" he asked, grinning and showing me a set of vampire fangs. "Well, the first thing is, all that stuff you've been drinking is blood, and an idiot could figure that out, plus the dog that you bit. Yeah, maybe clean up after you had a meal. And the newspapers all over your bedroom windows were to block out the sun, because vampires don't like the sun," I explained. "Nice job, brother, but I guess I should take your advice and clean up after a meal," Frank said, grinning at me. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, confused. "Well, I haven't had dinner, and right now your blood looks freaking tasty, so I would run if I were you, and you better do it quickly," Frank hissed at me. As if he didn't need to tell me twice, I sprinted upstairs and then hid in my mum's bedroom, behind the bed with a hand over my mouth. This helped hide my breathing. And this was it. My own brother was going to kill me by biting me, and I was probably going to be this weird little sidekick. And then I heard the door to Mum's room getting slammed open, and I tensed up and held my hand harder over my mouth. "Ah, come on, Scott. It'll only hurt for a second. The master needs young, fresh blood, and yours is ripe for the picking," Frank's voice said, looking around the room. Who is this freaking master guy, and more importantly, how does this dumbass not see me? I thought as I heard him walking around. Then I noticed the bay window Mum liked to look out of during the morning. It was still light outside and I had an idea, and so I stood up and cleared my throat. "You know, Frank, you're looking a bit pale. Maybe this will help you glow," I shouted as I grabbed the cord for the window blinds. I then whipped the blinds up and sunlight burst into the room. Frank cried out, shielding his face with his hands, but I knew it was too late because he uncovered his face and fell to the ground on his knees. Then I watched in shock as a cloud of black smoke came out of my brother's mouth, and then it disappeared. I then ran over to Frank, getting on my knees close to him, but not near him. I then noticed the bite on his neck was fading, no longer showing, and then he looked at me, and I could see that Frank's eyes weren't red. They were his normal blue colour. "Oh my God, Scott, I'm so sorry," Frank said as I helped him off the floor and sat him down on my mum's bed. "Frank, it's okay, don't cry. Don't be upset. Tell me, what do you remember? Anything at all? This had to happen while you were camping," I said, hoping he would explain it all to me. Frank then told me that on the last day of his camping trip before he came home, he decided to explore this famous cave people were telling him about. In the midst of exploring the place, he was bitten on the neck by a bat. He then told me that he thought the bat looked weird because it was significantly larger than any normal bat. It also had red eyes like the ones he had when he was a vampire. But the dumbest part was that Frank didn't tell anyone that he was bit by a bat and just kept it a secret, and I was even more shocked how no one noticed the big bat bite mark on his neck. But that was a story for another day. Now, a few years later, I actually wrote a book about my whole experience. Some people think that I dreamt it or made it all up to get famous and have a book deal. However, I'm not lying to anyone. My brother was really bitten by a vampire, and I really did experience the curse of a vampire. Wow. Certainly another one. Wow. Intriguing and refreshing vampire story there from the incredible mind of TheStoryKid from over on Reddit, No Sleep. Big thank you, StoryKid, for allowing me to narrate your story on the show. Really did enjoy this one, and I hope you enjoyed my rendition and look forward to more of your work in the future. Well, guys and girls as ever, you know the drill. Please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. Now, if you're an aspiring writer or would just like to have a crack at things like myself, then please do get in touch with me at the contact email, which is as on screen. contactthedeadone@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope you all had a fantastic week at work or school, or perhaps you're a long distance driver. Whatever it is that you do, I hope you're enjoying it and giving it your all. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry.